Good afternoon,
Good
and welcome to this webinar. As you all already know, the webinar is titled "Delisting of Unrecognized Political Parties and Proposed Limit on Cash Contributions by Election Commission of India." Now, this has been necessitated, or I should say provoked, by a decision by the Election Commission of India in early September, when they announced that they had delisted a large number of unrecognized registered political parties. Now, this action was taken once earlier in I think May also. So they have delisted a large number of, as to repeat, unregistered, recognized political parties. Now, as we have, and they also mentioned something about the cash limit for political parties and so on. We had formulated 8 issues to be discussed by the panelists, and for the benefit of the audience as well as all of us, let me repeat those 8 issues. One, the need for election commission to have the power to deregister a political party. Now, deregistering is different from derecognition and, of course, delisting. Number two, crackdown on unrecognized parties is insufficient unless similar action is initiated against national and state parties for non-compliance and discrepancies in their declared information. Number three, lowering the disclosure limit of anonymous donations for the political parties from rupees 20,000 to rupees 2,000, while electoral bonds remain untouched. Number four, capping of cash donations received by political parties to 20% of their total receipts. Number five, making all contributions to political parties digital, banning cash contributions altogether. Number six, mechanism to identify and deter foreign contributions in the context that there is no mechanism to segregate foreign donations at the initial stages, specifically in the present format of contribution report, which is not equipped to seek additional information. Number seven, opposition. There has been opposition from political parties to election commission's proposals that the individual donation for political parties should be beyond the purview of the Election Commission of India. And lastly, there has been discussion between the Law Ministry and the Election Commission to analyze some major overhauls in the Representation of People Act and other laws to bring transparency to the electoral process. Now, these are the issues that we identified. In addition to this, I have a personal request to all the panelists that if one or more of them can also explain to us what is this process of delisting. I understand derecognition, I understand deregistration, but I am not sure what does delisting mean in the context of Election Commission of India and political parties. Now, to discuss these issues and whatever else our panelists like to, we have 4 very distinguished panelists. One is Dr. Nasim Zaidi, who has been a former Chief Election Commissioner. He has been a distinguished bureaucrat and one of the few actually who earned his PhD, not necessarily having been conferred by some university or the other. We have Mr. P.K. Das, who is a former member of the Indian Revenue Service. He spent very eventful 6-7 years with the Election Commission of India as the head of the Expenditure Control Division. And during his tenure there, the Election Commission took a large number of very, very innovative and path-making decisions. We have Ms. Aiyshwarya Mahadev, who is, I suppose, in a way, the representative of youth here. She is the General Secretary of the Karnataka Congress, and she is on the national uh, media panel of the Indian National Congress. And then we have Mr. Arvind Gunasekar, who is a journalist. He's been with the NDTV for quite some time, and he is well known for his investigative and legal kind of stories, which makes him special not only by designation, which says he's senior special correspondent, he's also special as an investigative journalist. So with this, I would not stand in between you and the panelists. My only request to the panelists is that there are four panelists, and we have about an hour and a half. So I would request each one of the panelists to limit their presentation to about 15 minutes, so that we have adequate time for question and answer and discussions after the presentations. So with that, I will now request Dr. Zaidi to go ahead with his presentation. Dr. Zaidi, sir.
Thank you, Professor Chhokar and ADR for giving an invitation to me to make few comments in this webinar. Uh, so what I'm proposing is that probably I don't need to cover all the focus points here, and I will try to make comments on 4 5 points, and probably core financing points can be covered by Mr. Das, and if anything required later on, I can add there. So so actually, I think this webinar is probably looking for an overall legal governance of political parties from financing point of view. And let me state it up front, which I'm sure people know that legal governance of political parties in general and legal governance of political parties in terms of financing is very loose, to say the least. The only requirements are that a party should be registered.
Dr. Zaidi, if I may request you to switch on your camera, we are not able to see you, sir.
No, I deliberately switch it off so that I have bandwidth. If you like, I can
Okay,
come.
okay, that's all right.
Unless you are very keen to see me.
Well, it is always better to see the speaker, but anyways, the choice is yours.
Okay, no problem. Sometimes I will come and sometimes I will disappear, depending upon the situation at my end. So, so what I was trying to say was that the legal governance is very, very loose, to say the least. There are only three or four requirements. A party should be registered under Section 29A. The party can accept contribution under 29B, and party should make declaration to appropriate authorities under Section 29C. This is the legal framework available with regard to parties. And there is something on symbol order where there is a concept of recognition. And the third one is purely moral, which is the model code of conduct. So the issue that comes before us is that we must have. I mean, of course, it goes without saying that we must have a proper and effective governance of political parties based on some important pillars, which is like transparency in contributions to political parties, their declaration, and limits on financing and penalties based on civic and criminal in nature. That is what is needed very, very badly in our country. In this regard, there is a point mentioned by Professor Chhokar that there is a discussion that is going on between Home Ministry and Election Commission. So, so there has been. I mean, there was a booklet prepared which compiles all the electoral reforms, roughly 50 in number, which were proposed to the Law Ministry for carrying out amendments in the Representation of People Act. During my tenure, the Commission also took a decision to undertake a total review of the Representation of People Act, because this act was framed in 1952, 51 and 50. And since then, there have been only piecemeal amendments in the Representation of People Act, depending upon the requirement of situation. So, we undertook an exercise by which, through a process of consultation, etc., to which a draft of the modern Representation of People Act was prepared, and I left it at that in 2017. I understand that thereafter there has not been much progress on that front, and according to my latest information, and just to correct Professor Chhokar, there has been no discussion between Law Ministry and Election Commission of India with regard to the wholesale review of the Representation of People Act. Sometimes discussions do take place depending upon the requirement of situation. Actually, the booklet of electoral reform that was sent to the ministry has a chapter 7, which was published in my time, and it has about more than a dozen proposals on pertaining to the legal and financing governance of political parties. So that is with regard to the discussions that are taking place to bring transparency in electoral process. I don't know when will those discussions begin and when will the commission find time to push this agenda forward. As such, it is very difficult to get legal amendments in the law. Now, turning the towards the issue number one, and Professor Chhokar wanted to understand what is this deregistration, delisting, or he understands the deregistration, but what is this delisting about? So you would recall that election commission cannot deregister a political party, and why it cannot deregister a political party is because of a final law laid down by the Supreme Court of India in 2002, where they say there is no express provision in the Representation of People Act for deregistration, because Election Commission acts as a quasi judicial authority, and it has no power to review its order, excepting under two three circumstances, like based on fraud, or a party goes back on its commitment to secularism, etc., etc., and a ground on which election commission does not is not required to hold an inquiry. Election Commission, it was also said by the Supreme Court of India that Election Commission also cannot employ Section 16 of the General Clauses Act, which actually confer power on an executive authority to review its own orders. So the Supreme Court said that you are quasi-judicial, and therefore you cannot invoke this. So virtually, there a blanket ban was placed on the Election Commission of India from undertaking deregistration of political parties. Therefore, way back in 2000, between 2002 and 2006, uh, an alternative was thought, and as you would recall, that a political party is registered for the purposes of contesting elections. So it was a kind of internal process evolved, that if a registered political party does not contest any election after registration in the past two consecutive elections in any state, then this will be deemed to have ceased to function. And based on that deeming effect, the election commission will remove them from the list of political parties that is maintained with the election commission of India. It does not amount to deregistration because it doesn't have the power. And after removing it from the list of election commission of India, generally election commission would refer it to the income tax authorities to review whether any income tax exemption has been availed of by a political party. According to the Commission's view, the political party which has not contested election and if it has received contribution should not get the exemption. Now there have been only three major exercises with regard to this delisting. One was conducted in 206, where about 200 parties were delisted. Then another exercise was undertaken in my commission, where we delisted about 250 political parties. And then there was an exercise recently in 2022. So the important point here is that while delisting is not a deregistration, but from the income tax point of view, probably based on the recommendation of the Election Commission, if the income tax authorities review their income tax exemption granted to such parties, probably this may have a major effect, but nobody has analyzed as to what kind of view has been taken by the income tax authority, and that is where it rests. And I think this is an area of study that will require to be undertaken in future. So this is the broad set of action. But now the ADR has listed focal point number two, where you say why can't the commission take similar action based on the what you say non-compliance and discrepancy in the declared information. Probably once again the election commission is handicapped uh, because these major parties, national or state recognized parties, are contesting elections, and therefore commission cannot easily find a ground to probably proceed even in the direction of delisting. And I don't think that delisting can be undertaken because delisting itself can have a major shock, in the political system. And even if there is a non-compliance, if there is a discrepancy in the declared information, probably deregistration, if at all, or even delisting would be too much of an action. It has to be graded. Like if there is a non-compliance, if there is a discrepancy, probably some action short of deregistration or delisting can be undertaken. But again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, there is a very loose governance framework, and you can't penalize a political party in a civil manner or in a criminal manner, and therefore election commission is, I mean, my view is at present handicapped, and the power to be given to election commission of India, yes, the commission has been saying it forever. Now the question is, will it happen? Unlikely in the short run. So that is where my comment stand. And then there is another point that has been mentioned, that there is a need. Professor Chhokar mentioned that there is a proposed limit on cash contribution, which has been floated by Election Commission of India. And here, I would leave it to Dr. Dash to make more comments. The only point that I would like to say here is that probably here the concept of coupons, you know, the contribution by individual members to political parties, making contribution, say in the denomination of rupees 10, rupees 20, would feature, because many political parties say that this is our traditional method of collection, traditional method of donation, and like CPI, CPM argue that they hold meeting, they spread their sheets and they place bags, and people come and place their donation. But we also know that these 10 rupees, 20 rupees aggregate to a very bigger amount. And we also know that there are some kind of recommendations from the, for example, international, no, Indian Chartered Accountants Association or the institute, which has advised the commission that political parties should be asked to have a schedule where they must they must declare the issuance and sale of coupons. It must be classified and it must be disclosed. But I don't know whether this individual contribution will be kept out of the cash contribution of political parties. Um, uh, because they argue that they don't get, in any case they don't get enough funds through various existing means, and suppose you ban these individual contribution, this may lead to unequal playing field, given the unequal contributions which political parties are receiving. So that point has to be kept in mind when making the contribution to political parties totally cashless. Probably some scope for these individual contribution will have to be kept in mind. Now, the other point relating to this discussion is I have, I think, 2 minutes or a minute or so. So another point is relating to foreign contribution. Now, this foreign contribution we know is prohibited under Section 29C. We know that under Rule 85B of the Conduct of Election Rules, parties have to comply with Section 29C. We are aware that there is a Form 24A under which they are required to make certain declaration of their contributions. And with regard to foreign contribution, there is only a sort of appendix which only says that whether whereby you declare that whether you have received any foreign contribution or not. But under the given scheme of electoral bond, now it is very, very difficult to sort of detect foreign contribution. Why? Because now a foreign company can come and set up a joint venture in the country, and the money can flow from foreign company to the JV, and then through electoral bond to a political party. So the point that has been highlighted by ADR is actually very, very appropriate. That I think the Form 24A needs amendment, whereby so long as electoral bond is a scheme exists, any money coming through electoral bond scheme it's very difficult to detect. However, for non-electoral bond financing route, probably some amendment is needed in the in Form 24A declaration part. This requires some work how to detect it. Probably Dr. Dash can make further comment on that, and I would leave it at that. Probably other core financing issue our friend can take up, and then I can chip in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zaidi. I really appreciate your comments and your sticking to time. And you have actually left some unfinished business to Mr. Das, and I will therefore request Mr. Das to take up from where Dr. Zaidi left. Mr. Das.
Unmute.
You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Das. No.
Now is it audible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Chhokar and Dr. Zaidi, for passing on some questions for me, which I'll try to try to answer. Thank you, ADR, for inviting me to this panel. And ADR has been doing a great job since last many years for making awareness about election laws, as you could see in the initial presentations by ADR. So, two things which Dr. Zaidi has already covered is the legal framework, except that 29A, Section 29 of RP Act, political parties do not have there is any legislation for political parties, to the extent that even the Indian Constitution, which has so many articles, which has even mentioned the administrative powers of the Election Commission, the administrative power, how they will be appointed, and these are things, but they avoided or they deliberately did not mention a single word about political party in the Constitution. Probably because the political parties played an important role in the freedom struggle, and they thought that they should be touched, they should not be touched. Probably that is the reason, I do not know. But except in the anti-defection law, in some schedule, there is a reference to political party. Otherwise, Indian constitution doesn't make any reference to political parties. Given this background, I must say that the political parties, though they play a very important role in democratic functioning in any state, in any country. Without political parties, democracy probably cannot function as it is seen in different countries. And particularly in India, which is surrounded or which is located in a geopolitical situation surrounded by Pakistan on the west, little ahead we have Afghanistan, little ahead we have China, little below we have Myanmar, little below we have Bangladesh and last Sri Lanka. So democracy has not taken roots anywhere. I'm in India with much difficulty, thanks to our forefathers and our framers of the constitution. The democracy has been planned in such a way that we could have, though the democracy was being laughed at by the British Parliament. If I remember correctly, there are several sessions on that India is going, and there was criticism that it is the biggest joke that India is going to have democracy. But now the fact is that we are the largest functioning democracy in the world, and it is almost the democracy is going to stay. There have been threats in between, but it is the people can respond to those threats. There have been aberrations also. So one of the aberrations which as has been discussed by Dr. Zaidi is the political parties. Political parties, there are no law. Since there are no law, so some parties resort to certain activities which may not be liked or which may not be as per the general liking of the people or maybe the intellectuals. So before I go to this topic, the Professor Chhokar has raised 2-3 issues like delisting, derecognition, and deregistration. What is the difference? The political parties are registered under Section 29 of RP Act. Certain conditions are required, like they have to pay some money and 100 people should give affidavit and all that. Then they are registered. What are the conditions for registration? It is mentioned there in Section 29. Once they are registered, then there are some political parties which go for recognition. There can be recognized as state level party or they can be recognized as national level party. So what happens with the recognition? The process is that if you recognized as a recognized party, if you get the recognition from the ECI as a recognized party, then you get a symbol of your choice, which you can use in all the elections. If it is a state level party, they can use the symbol in the state. If it is a national party, they can use the symbol all over the country. That is a big advantage. And deregistration is that under Section 29A, then the parties are to be deregistered, which the provision, express provision, is not there. As Dr. Zaidi has already mentioned that in that Supreme Court case, the court has held, Honorable Court has held, that unless there is express provision for deregistration, EC doesn't have a power under the General Clauses Act. Normally, it is understood that those people who have, those authorities who have power to register or to create, they have the inherent power to deregister or destroy or withdraw. But that is not available with the Election Commission. So the issue is whether there is need for deregistration, whether deregistration can be done, and whether is it the best choice to address the evils that has come up. These are the questions we have to answer. To my mind, deregistration is one of the issues which is the extreme issue. It is called Brahmastra, which the court is not willing to give this power to EC. Now, what happens if they are registered? What happens? What benefit they get? They get basically 2-3 benefits for which they are keen to register, and deregistration, if they are deregistered, they go all protest that they should not be done. The benefits are like number one, they get this symbol, which is a big benefit. If they are recognized, they get a symbol. Then second is that a political party registered, they can raise donation from the public. And if they raise donation from the public, the donors the donor can enjoy tax exemption 100%. 100% tax exemption if they donate to a political party. That is under section 80 GG, 80 GG, I think 80 GG C. So similarly, if not only the donor gets the exemption, but the political party also enjoy tax exemption in the sense that whatever they receive in their hands, it is not taxable. This exemption is there under section 13A of Income Tax Act. That not only the donors enjoy tax exemption, the political parties also enjoy tax exemption on their total receipt if they are they are registered under RP Act. Now, Dr. Zaidi was also mentioning this, whether delisting will automatically lead to withdrawal of this exemption under the income tax law. To my mind, it is not possible as it is in the existing situation, because the 13A of the Registration Act, of the Income Tax Act, which provides for exemption of the political parties, they say that has defined political party as any entity or any entity registered under RP Act. So if it is so long as it remains registered, they cannot, the income tax department cannot withdraw the exemption. Of course, there is a case now after delisting of several parties, that delisting means they have withdrawn that symbol and they have notified it that they will not be given a single symbol for putting their candidates in the election. This is called delisting. So they have withdrawn under Symbols Act, Symbols Order. The Symbols Act was passed in 1968. Let me go say a little deeper into that. 1968, the Symbols Order was an administrative order by the Election Commission under its plenary powers under 324, Article 324 of the Constitution, where the Election Commission issued order, a long order for symbols of the political parties. This order was working well. During Mr. Session, when he was the Chief Election Commissioner, this order was amended and new clause was inserted, that is called 16A. That 16A, para 16A in 1994 was inserted, and that gives the power that if the section says, if the Election Commission has power to withdraw, I will just read out the exact provision. The power to suspend or withdraw the recognition of a recognized political party for its failure to observe Model Code of Conduct or follow lawful directions of the Commission. Now, here it's a point to mention here. In Supreme Court judgment in 2002, it clarified that Election Commission, even if a political party violates the provisions of the Constitution or the Model Code of Conduct or even the lawful directions of the Commission doesn't have power to deregister a political party. This is the settled law by the Supreme Court in 2002, although they have left this part untouched. The para 16A of Symbols Order remains still untouched, and under which now the Election Commission probably works to delist those political parties who enjoy a single symbol for their candidates, and they delist them and notify them. But so long as income tax exemption is concerned, probably we require an amendment to the law, income tax law, that those delisting, bringing in the concept of delisting, though it is not there under any law or in anywhere in the, it is a creation of the commission, and this has to be forward. It has to be followed up to make it a law, because merely delisting doesn't, ipso facto, gives withdrawal of exemption to the political parties. This is my view, and which require exemption. Now, my second issue was whether there are any other alternative available, or should we ask only for deregister as quota settled and political parties or the governments are never interested to make any changes in the RP Act against which will act against the political parties. It is quite obvious. So what should be, whether we have any alternative in hand? So now the alternative in hand to my mind is there are several alternatives. Like one is withdrawing the symbols. This is a huge power. Why political parties want registration? Only to enjoy symbols. Number two, to enjoy donations. So if those two are addressed under different laws, by symbols order, this can be addressed since the commission is doing only for unrecognized party. Not a single recognized party has been delisted so far by the commission. So this can be used for the recognized parties for delisting if they violate the lawful instructions of the commission. Now, what are the lawful instructions of the commission? We have to deal all those 5-6 issues that Professor Chhokar has raised. Will come under that. So now this is the clarity about. I think I have made it clear about the political parties. Now let us see the second condition to raise donation. The second issue was, I think, whether there should be a crackdown on the political party. So if there is, for the first time, the political parties were made to follow certain accounting principles. This Institute of Chartered Accountants, when Dr. Zaidi was the Chief Election Commissioner, we took the initiative, and for the first time, ICAW, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, prescribed the guidelines for the audit standards of the political party. Otherwise, it was not clear. Some were reporting the financial year as year ending, some were reporting the calendar year as year ending, some were reporting cash system, some were saying it is a mercantile system, some were following mixed system. So the reporting was vague, and you cannot make any head or tail out of that reporting. So for the first time, ICI in 2000, I think 15 or 14, I remember, they came up with the audit standards for the political parties, where they have given some guidelines. These are guidelines, not law. They have guidelines that what this auditor will do. These guidelines are binding on the auditor, but not on the political party. What the auditor will do during audit of the political parties. So is this extensive guideline there. And besides that, they also suggested certain other alternatives as coupons and other things, which Dr. Zaidi had already mentioned. So now the question is to clamp down on political parties for violation, then these guidelines should be followed strictly. But I was searching the Election Commission whether there is any notification or any irregularity notice by the Election Commission and subsequently followed up by issuance of notice to a political party because of the violation of the guideline. I could not find a case to that extent, or maybe it is not in the website, maybe they are in the file, I do not know. But this can be followed up by the EC and enforced, so that we don't require any change in law or anything which can bring some discipline among the political parties. Now, second issue is that third issue is that which was raised by Professor Chhokar was, I think, capping of the cash donation at 20%. Okay, now, and another is from 20,000 to 2,000 and capping of the cash donation to 20%. Now, if you see, the Election Commission had also during Mr. Sampad was the CEC and Dr. Zaidi was the Election Commission. The Election Commission had issued a transparency guideline for political parties. That was in the year, I think, I exactly remember, it was in 2014, 29th August 2014. What does this transparency guideline say? This transparency guideline says that they should maintain, they were not maintaining any books of account. So they should maintain the books of accounts from which it is possible to derive their accounts, and some conclusion can be made. So they should maintain such books of accounts. Then accounts must be maintained by who will maintain the accounts. That was also not clear. They say state will maintain, the headquarters doesn't maintain, then where the books will be available. So these were all in the guideline that the books of accounts will be maintained at the headquarters, and the accounts maintained by him shall conform to the chartered accountants audit standards. This has been already there, but there has been probably no case reported in the website on this, whether there is any party has violated these guidelines. And in the same instruction, there was another instruction that the political party should not receive cash more than 2000. In this guideline, it is there already that they should not receive any cash more than 2000. And this was discussed with all political parties. After that, this guideline was issued by the Election Commission. It's a guideline. But whether there is any violation of that, that also I could not find any case in the election website. So if it is there that they cannot receive cash more than 2000, then there is no need of change of any law. The Election Commission can only enforce that provision and bring them to some discipline. So capping of this, there is no separate law is required. Of course, in that I remember when this provision guideline was being issued, the smaller parties, they protested that after the guideline was issued, they protested that we take bucket donation or hundi collections from different places while we campaign. So Commission also made some clarification on that, that bucket donation will be exempt from this, but that will be recorded by the CEO. They have to inform where they are going to have the bucket collection. They will have a CCTV recording of the donations, and also they have to deposit these cash donations within 7 days in their bank account. It's not that they should keep cash and this and that. One is receiving cash is problematic, and the other is giving cash is also more problematic than issuing cash. That is more important. Professor Chhokar can note that the same guidelines also said that they cannot spend in cash more than 20,000 rupees to a single person, which has been subsequently amended in 2016. That now they say the cash cannot be given more than 10,000 to a single person on a single day. So it is already there. Whether that is effective or not effective, if there are some cases, then only we can know. But there is no case of violation or anything. I think the political parties have followed this guideline. That is why no case has been reported. Now the next issue is whether capping of cash donation to 20%. Yeah, there is a law in respect of charitable issue. There is a law has developed in a major way after 2014. For example, the Income Tax Act has said in case of charitable institutions that any donation in cash, any anonymous donation, cash donation, they have banned that if you take any cash donation, then it will be taxed. And so far as anonymous donation, it is not cash donation, it is anonymous donation. If there is any anonymous donation, cash donation and anonymous donation, there is a difference. The anonymous donation, if they take any anonymous donation, then maximum 1 lakh or 5% of the total amount received can be taxed to income tax in case of charitable institutions. In case of religious bodies, this restriction doesn't apply. So already there is a law. What we have to do is only to extend that to few political parties in case the Election Commission is not able to, or feeling that this guideline is not sufficient, then this law can be amended just to extend it to political parties. That is not a very big amendment is required for this. As a money bill, it can be done. So now this is the fourth issue, and fifth is contribution to digital mode. Yes, by any chance it should be all digital, but still there is some parts of the country where they don't have mobile and this thing, but they can argue that no, digital, it cannot be made mandatory. But we can say to a certain extent, some capping should be done. Up to this extent, it can be received should be digital, and some provision for cash can be allowed. Then next issue is foreign contribution. This is the most dangerous thing which has happened. Now the law has been changed. Now the Company Act has been changed, the RP Act has been changed, and the income tax law has been changed. So what happens now? Earlier there was a restriction that if a company or any company donates to a political party, they have to disclose it in their annual report. Now that is done away with. They cannot disclose. Now, second is that they cannot they cannot donate more than, it was I think 3% of the total profit or something like that. It was there, but now it is done away with. So a loss-making company can also donate to a political party. And since there is no disclosure, a foreign entity can go through the roundabout way, can donate to a company, and the company can donate to the political party. So they will obey the law. FCR will not come into picture in case of political parties. So this is a dangerous thing which has happened. I think we have to be more alert about this. And I did not find any case in the Election Commission website regarding this foreign currency cases or this thing. But this is a potential area which need to be watched, and it has to be further restraint is required on this area. Then individual donation beyond the purview of Election Commission. The argument of political parties is quite legal and justified in the sense that Election Commission has power under 324 to issue directions only in respect of superintendence, direction and control of elections. Once elections are over, Election Commission has no power. So if that they are quite, this is a very reasonable argument and very rational argument, but the commission can still argue that any money or any donation or used or received by political party are for elections. So anything, if we don't have any restraint on them, then the election procedure will be violated, or this sanity of elections will be disturbed. So under that, maybe they can put that mostly the funds are received within last 1 year or 2 years. So 1 or 2 years, and there is election somewhere or other throughout the country, and some political parties fight. So they can put this restriction that before 1 year or 2 years, that if any money or the contribution is received by individual political donor, individual donor to a political party, then that can come under the purview of Election Commission. Only thing is you have to interpret the one side of the one glass is half full and one glass is half empty. Like that, we have to take the glass to the extent it is full. We can take full advantage of that. Now, Law Commission and overall of electoral laws, there are several Law Commission recommendations on these. There's a huge, but for your information, not a single step has been taken on the recommendation of Law Commission. Since last 30 years, Law Commission has been recommending all these. So I do not know what is the mechanism to persuade the government, whether it is opposition government or the government in power. They have all agreed that we will not implement this. So I have seen during our time when we had all political party meetings on this, there was huge protest by all political parties, small, big, large, small, party in power, opposition, all parties, they oppose this. So the debate has to be carried on, and I think ADR can play a better role in this regard to create the debate and make the desired impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Das. I must say that I perhaps have a lot to comment on both the joint observations of Dr. Zaidi and Mr. Das, but I will hold that on depending on the time. We are significantly behind time, so I will request Ms. Aiyshwarya Mahadev to share her views as a representative of the youth and of the political parties, both.
Good afternoon, sir. First and foremost, thank you so much for the opportunity to be speaking here, especially with personalities as prolific. I remember reading about Dr. Zaidi and his recommendations and also the work that ADR does. I want to basically keep both topics to the idea of purpose. Do they serve the ends of democracy, and what is the current scenario? And due to the paucity of time, and I know Arvind still has to speak, I will not take too much time, and I must say it's been very enlightening as of now. First and foremost, on this idea of delisting of unrecognized political parties, the way I want to approach this is a purpose-based exercise. When you look at it, when we first got freedom and the constitution and political parties and elections came into being, I think with the wisdom of the people that made the constitution, they did not put limits on how many political parties we could have, whether there was a variance, whether there was state or national parties, and the law naturally progressed. Today, what is the scenario? Today, you see in India that you have around 2,858 political parties, out of which only 2% are recognized. There's a difference, of course, between recognized and unrecognized. However, by virtue of registration, a lot of political parties come into being. And the question I ask is, what is the purpose of a political party? The political party's primary purpose has to be further democracy, should increase participative choices, should cater to larger numbers. You cannot restrict political parties to only being, let's say, national or two parties like you see in the US system and across the globe. But the question that further arises are these massive number of political parties actually serving any democratic purpose? And if they are not, shouldn't the election commission validly have a right to take away that power that they have and the benefits that they enjoy? And a little bit of context from what I've been reading is that from 2010 to now, you've seen more than doubling of the number of registered unrecognized political parties, which means they have not fulfilled the criteria of either having a sufficient amount of vote share or have not contested enough elections and do not have the amount of electorate behind them as is recognized to get an official symbol and whatnot. However, the one benefit that these parties enjoy, which I think is problematic, is under Section 13A of the Income Tax Act, where they get tax exemptions and are allowed to take in donations. So the question we ask is, if political parties are given this benefit of having tax exemptions and taking in donations because they serve a democratic function, is it not legitimate for the election commission to take away that right, or rather the concerned authorities to take away that right if these political parties are not part of the democratic process of elections? Because, for example, out of the 2,800 odd parties that we have, in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, you saw only 673 of them actually participating in the elections in itself. So, at the end of it, the questions that we ask is, if the purpose of a political party is to cater to an electorate, is to contest elections, because quite obviously I do not see any other function a political party would legitimately have, is it not fair for the election commission then to have the authority or the right to not just delist them but deregister them? Because the scenario today is that deregistration is an extreme worst case scenario where, one, it was registered by fraud, which means that even if you register legitimately and later you commit fraud as a political party, they cannot deregister you. Second, the central government has to deem you illegal. Or third, a political party has to come out voluntarily and say we're working against the constitution or we cannot abide by the constitution anymore. And those are the only three extreme grounds for deregistration. So, in the larger environment of where you're seeing massive crackdowns on lots of political parties, where some have been delisted, some have been declared inactive, the question that has to be asked, and I think this has been asked for decades, to be honest. Some of the latest examples are 2014, the Supreme Court asked the Law Commission to look into deregistration. 16, Dr. Zaidi himself, when he had broad reforms that he put forth, he also spoke about the power of deregistration. 2017, the Madras High Court asked for deregistration as a concept. And every time the Election Commission goes to the Law Commission or asks the legislative bodies, please allow us this power, you see that the dialogue just continues. So, in essence, talking about delisting of parties and the second of compliance, I believe the biggest problem is that, one, delisting is not enough. Deregistration would serve the purpose, but I do not see legislative intent behind it. And second is, you will not see compliance has become such a loose term because there's a lack of consequence. You realize that when the government and the constitution and the authorities cannot clamp down on a massive number of parties that are not even contesting elections, where does the power come for them to take on nationally recognized parties? And the lack of consequence is what is basically leading to non-compliance. And I believe that is extremely problematic in a democratic setup. And today, when you see the way that the Election Commission is notifying the income tax authorities and looking at serious fraud, and several of these political parties are becoming basically conduits of illegality and on money being laundered, I think it is about time that the government step in to try and take some action, because at the end of it, the Election Commission ensures free, fair, transparent elections, accountability, and tries to prevent these black holes or these quagmires where you cannot answer for where the money is going. And in essence, that is what I believe about delisting of political parties. And the next, I think, is far more interesting for me as a lawyer, because I've been following this from when the first finance bill came into discussion, is the idea of limiting cash on limit on cash contributions, and having these limits by the Election Commission of India. So the idea, I think Mr. Jaitley himself, when that discussion on the finance bill was happening, came out and said that anonymous donations, the limit is going to be from 20,000 to 2,000, and in the same breath announced something called electoral bonds. So that, I think, in itself is an inherent contradiction. And to be very honest, I believe electoral bonds in themselves are a form of institutionalized corruption. I think ADR has been one of the parties that has been talking about the legality of electoral bonds. And the situation today is that while the Election Commission over decades has tried to bring transparency in how political parties handle their finances, electoral bonds inherently go against the entire concept of having accountability and transparency. And in the words of the Election Commission itself, this is quite a retrograde move in terms of bringing out any sort of transparency. So now, on one hand, the government is saying, reducing donations to 2,000 is going to ensure that, there is no illegality. But on the other hand, you're allowing anybody to get a bearer bond and donate it to anybody. And people who donate do not have to disclose it, as you've seen with the amendments, as Sir also spoke about. And that is what I think is problematic given the scenario today. Statistics tell me that electoral bonds are the highest share, or have the highest share of funding into a political party. And out of all the money that has gone in up until now, from 2018 to 20, 4,215 crores of electoral bonds have gone into the current dispensation. Opposition, which is around, it says 67 to 68% of all electoral bonds go to the government, or whichever dispensation is in power, while, let's say, the opposition, a party that I come from, got 11%, and a regional party like the BJD had a meager 2-3% of all the electoral bonds going in. So when the amount of electoral bonds are one of the highest amounts going into a political party, having anonymity on that while trying to create disclosure on any other sources of donation is not going to solve any of the problems. And even if, and I think Professor Chhokar himself, when talking about this idea of 2,000 donations, he says we can have infinite number of 1,999 rupee donations going in, and which is also a loophole. And in the scenario where 91% of all the bonds that have gone into the political parties happen to be more than 1 crore, you realize that there are a lot of concerns as to who has this amount of agency when it comes to money to be giving in. And in light of the recent fact that you saw a company in Calcutta talking about how 40 crores went into into electoral bonds, you question to see the corporate interests that are playing into political funding today. And that, I think, is extremely problematic. For me, the 20,000 to 2,000 does not serve any purpose as long as the issue of the electoral bonds are not solved. And to have a chief justice say you can figure out who has donated what by match the following, I think is an insult to the entire process of fair and transparent funding. And let's make one thing very clear. This is the 8th year consecutively that the current dispensation has had the highest donations by a mile and a margin. And that also tells you that the sort of money going in where you have no accountability and no trace is extremely damaging to the entire idea of transparency and to have some sort of symmetry in funding to political parties. And I think, the Supreme Court, there's supposed to be a hearing, but very recently there was another amendment where before state assembly elections, you have 15 days where you can buy electoral bonds. The question of where the RBI itself had questioned to say, why can you not have it in DMAT? Why is it, scripts? Why is it physically be trading? None of these have been answered. And since 2017, or since the finance bill, where FEMA was overlooked or bypassed, or where companies didn't have to disclose political parties, you've created a greater environment of opacity. And the question we need to ask at the end of it is, does it serve one, the purpose of having a participative, free, and fair democracy? Absolutely not. Does it disadvantage certain political parties? Yes. Does it create an unfair advantage for dispensations that are in power? 150%. But I don't, quite honestly, while ADR and Common Cause and political party itself have filed this petition and are asking for the legality to be determined, I think that after 2019, you still had close to 18 or 20 tranches of electoral bonds being sent out. So that creates a bigger problem. And in essence, in terms of political funding, while all these decades they've tried to have a sunshine policy on how you basically need to have transparency, that has not happened. And we've gone back quite a few decades in the terms of the large scale corporate money that is coming in. And then the question is, in a democracy, does the voter not have the right to see where the political party he's supporting gets their money? And that is not answered whatsoever. And in essence, I think it is extremely unfortunate, the situation on political funding today. I do believe there's another hearing coming up, and this recent notification is flies in the face of that. But I seriously hope that there is some reprieve or some sort of check and balance on the mechanism of electoral bonds, because the Supreme Court's answers have been clearly insufficient from what I've noticed. And the last part is about this idea of completely banning cash contribution. I come from a rural constituency in rural Mysore in Karnataka, and for us, while digital India is much purported to have taken over all of the country, I think for us, politics is a very essential activity for us. And I still remember over the years seeing elections that, whether you like it or not, cash contributions are a form of how people give to parties. And to completely take that away, I think takes away from the essence of participative democracy, to be honest, sir. And I do hope, yes, there has to be far more digitalization of funding and contribution, because you can keep a record. But the larger problem of political funding, I do not see being solved anytime, because there are lots of vested interests that have flown in the face of the Election Commission's recommendations, the RBI's recommendations as well. So, in conclusion, hopefully we'll see the court case seeing more progress, and hopefully it'll bring some change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mahadev. It was very nice. I think you brought in a fairly interesting perspective. Only in a light-hearted way, let me point out that the case which says that Election Commission has no power to deregister political parties is called Institute of Social Welfare versus Indian National Congress. It just happens to be that way, nothing else. Uh, Mr. Arvind Gunasekar, I know you quite well, and I am sorry you were the last, and we are under pressure of time. But I am sure, as a TV journalist, you know how to pack your punch in
Value
as
that time.
brief.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Chhokar. In fact, thanks for this opportunity. And also, it's always a pleasure to listen to former Chief Election Commissioner, Dr. Zaidi. And also, it was very enlightening and enriching when Sir P.K. Das spoke about how this particular, even the delisting of all these political parties does not actually mean that they will, the right of exemption in the tax, they would be losing that particular right. That's something that very enriching. And also, thanks to Aiyshwarya, also it was from the perspective we got to hear a political perspective from Aiyshwarya also. So as journalists, like it's an in-depth discussion that I was a part of. In fact, all you people have spoken in depth or in detail on this subject. But as journalists, I just want to make few points and also many questions. Like let me start with this, the very first subject or the topic about the delisting of political parties. Like Dr. Zaidi said, this is the third instance of Election Commission cracking the whip and then delisting political parties. And this time almost 284 unrecognized registered political parties have been delisted. And why were these political parties delisted? Because the only sole ground that was given was that these political parties were not actively participating in any of the electoral process, but only because to curb the menace of abuse of money power in the electoral process, and that's why the election commission took this initiative of delisting all these 284 political parties and then forwarding the details of these political parties to income tax department. And what we saw, what we witnessed right after that was income tax department conducting searches across most of these delisted unrecognized registered political parties, and even income tax sources also say that these political parties were merely working on papers only for the contributions, etc., but they were not doing any political work per se. But my question, my very limited question on this particular point is that if curbing the abuse of money power is the aim of election commission in order to delist all these political parties, but how much do these parties actually contribute to abuse of money power in election? Because many of these parties have not even actively participated in electoral process. In fact, if you could see the electoral process, all the main political parties, let it be the recognized national parties, the state parties, and some unrecognized but registered political parties are very much actively participating in electoral process. But how much of these 284 political parties actively are actually contributed in abuse of money power? If the election commission actually wants to crack the whip on abuse of money power, but the election commission has to start a job from the recognized political parties also. Because I come from the state of Tamil Nadu, I do know, like Tamil Nadu has always been the state whenever there are elections in the state of Tamil Nadu, the seizure of money has always crossed 3 digits, that is more than 100 crore has been the benchmark of Tamil Nadu politics. I do remember even in the last time we did get to hear from ground that voters were given almost 1,000 or 2,000 per vote. That's the kind of abuse of money power that's happening. But all those the parties actually which abuse the electoral process through money power is all these recognized state parties and also recognized national parties which contest this election. But what does the election commission say and what do they have in their hand in order to curb this abuse of money power? Because merely delisting all these political parties, unrecognized political parties, will not stop this abuse of money power. Like Dasa was explaining, this in fact it does not have any value per se, because these political parties can still avail exemption from income tax, because as per the Income Tax Act, the moment you are registered as a political party, then you can avail the exemption. So even if the income tax department conduct the kind of assessment of all these political parties, and then they come up with kind of irregularities and violations, still these political parties will enjoy the tax exemption. But this does not actually cure the main problem, that is the abuse of money power in elections. That's something that the election commission should seriously think about. And again, like everyone said, that election commission does not have real power in order to take action. But under Article 324, they do have the superintendence over conducting free and fair election. And the election commission should seriously think about coming with innovative ways in order to curb this menace of abuse of money power. That's the first topic. And the second topic is really about election commission proposal to reduce the cash contribution from 20,000 to 2,000. That's something that the election commission is proposed as part of its measure, along with to the proposal one, the limiting the cash donation to a maximum of 20 crore or 20% of the overall contribution. Again, I have questions on that particular aspect also, because now the cash contribution are not the real problem. It has been overshadowed. It has been replaced by electoral bond. Because if you could see the electoral bond system, the party that is in power will have advantage any given day. If you could see that the data that we have as on 2021, almost BJP alone has bagged almost 4,250 crore worth electoral bond. That's almost over 70% of the entire electoral bond. So even if the election commission moves to reduce this cash contribution from 20,000 to 2,000, but the cash contribution has already been replaced by electoral bonds. Unless or until the election commission takes a firm stand in Supreme Court, even when last time when there was this case in Supreme Court, election commission in fact did not take a clear stand. But it's high time that if the election commission is seriously considering about free and fair election and about the abuse of money power, that's something that the electoral bonds should also be kept in mind. Because when a party in power, it's getting more than 70% of the entire electoral bonds, that shows that the process is not as transparent. The process, the entire system is in advantage of the party in power. Today, an X party will be in power. Tomorrow, an Y party will be in power. Look at the gap. Look at the margin between the party in power and the principal opposition party. The party in power has backed almost 4,250 crore worth electoral bonds as on 2021 in 3 years. But the second party, the principal opposition party, has managed to get only 600 to maybe 700 to 800 crore. That's a huge difference. But it clearly also shows that the cash contribution alone is not the problem, but even the electoral bonds should also be clearly discussed and debated, because this is in a way this would not help in bringing a clear, free and fair election in the long run, because electoral bonds is also helping a kind of a political party. That is also, but though there are several arguments that says that the black money cannot be injected into electoral system or inducted into electoral system, and that's why electoral bonds are the best bet when it comes to curb this black money. But again, even if curbing the black money is something that the election commission is seriously thinking about, but the election commission, the biggest the mandate of the election commission is to conduct free and fair election. Curbing black money, there are several agencies like income tax department, every other agency, they can do their job. But how does this electoral bonds benefiting a party in power, with that happening, how can the election commission think about conducting free and fair election? Also coming to the expenditure, because now we have spoken about the contribution aspect of the election, but also the expenditure aspect of the election. In January this year, election commission increased the expenditure limit from 75 lakh to 90 lakh. That's the maximum, and also almost to 40 lakh, 90 lakhs for the Lok Sabha constituencies, and also almost 40 lakhs to the assembly constituencies. Let's all be clear. Do you think that any political party, or for a matter of fact, any candidate can contest an election on date, as on day, with just 90 lakhs for an Lok Sabha constituency? Do you think that every candidate is just limiting their expenditures only to 90 lakhs? That is just on paper. No candidate can face a contest an election with just 90 lakh rupees, 90 lakh rupees for a Lok Sabha constituency, and also just 40 lakhs with the assembly constituency. It's just that we are trying to fool ourselves, because it's not happening per se. We do have expenditure observers. We do have all kind of observers. Everyone is keeping a close tab. But can we say for sure that the expenditure is just 90 lakhs when it comes to Lok Sabha, and just 40 lakhs to assembly, because assembly constituency? No, it's not the fact, because we are trying to fool ourselves. That's where the election commission has to actually think. It's not just merely for the sake of doing something that they are doing something. No, if at all, in the long run, if we want to hold this, that the largest democracy, the tag of largest democracy, and we do, people still believe in the electoral system of India. Go to anywhere in the country. Even in the last press conference, when the election commission announced the schedule for Gujarat assembly election, the chief election commissioner was saying about how the countries across the globe really respect about our electoral process, and also the and also the election commission, with the way they conduct the election, because we do have the sanctity of election system in electoral system, and also the way we conduct our elections in India. But in the longer run, election commission seriously needs to take a serious view on this contribution aspect, especially in the view of electoral bonds, and also this expenditure, because the expenditure limit that we have put in as on date, that 90 lakhs for Lok Sabha constituency and just 40 lakhs for assembly constituency, is just a mockery of the system, because we all know that's not really happening now.
Thank you, Mr. Gunasekar. It was wonderful, and like a good journalist, you stuck to time and you raised many questions, and most of them I think were correct. But here, before we open it up to questions, let me clarify that Dr. Zaidi and Mr. Das are not representing the Election Commission of India. They have had the good fortune of having worked in the Election Commission of India for a significant amount of time. And when they were there, they did whatever they could, and their contributions are well known. But today, in this discussion, they are just perhaps slightly better informed citizens, but they are not representing the Election Commission, and they are not answerable for the shortcomings or whatever else of the Election Commission. Now, we have very little time, and therefore I will withhold my comments and request the moderators to open the floor for questions, and let us share some questions to the panelists, and then we'll see how we go. We would like to give the panelists a chance at the end to respond for a short while, but let us have a few questions first.
Professor Chhokar, I will leave certainly because I have a flight. So if you can give me a chance, I can reply, take up one or two questions and leave.
Well, it depends on the questions.
Okay, fine.
So let's begin with the questions. Nandini? Yes. Does ADR believe that the present FTPT first past the forced electoral system is the best? If not, why doesn't ADR wholeheartedly advocate an alternative system like, say, the party list proportional representation? Asked Mr. Subhash Athale. Mr. Athale, I can answer that question, but I think it will better for the time being. Let us to address questions to our panelists. I will answer this question before we sign off from this webinar today. So can we have the next question, please? We don't have any time to waste, my friends. Where is the next question? Well, if I don't know what's happening, whether another question exists or not, but then
So
in the
we have
meanwhile,
sorry to interrupt. So we have a question from Commodore Lokesh Patra. It's on the banner. We are
I
sharing
can't
it
see
shortly.
it.
Divya, please share it.
Yeah, there is possibility that political parties getting donations directly or indirectly from abroad, from NRIs, PIOs, via organizations having ECI clearance as close to the political parties, and it is supposed to continue. What is the rest of it? On February 4, in response to Parliament question number 689, government has provided data of NRIs, data or number of NRIs as 1.35 crores. As expected, Commodore Batra has given us a lot of data, but I don't see a question. On the other hand, ECI keeps its website geo-fenced. Why? My dear friend, Mr. Commodore Lokesh Batra, these questions cannot be answered here because Dr. Zaidi and Mr. Das are not representing the Election Commission, and therefore I overrule your question. I am saying so because Commodore Batra is a very good friend. Next question, please. Even recognized political parties hardly meet EC parameters, particularly most of national parties. Why ECI is so sympathetic towards them? Asked Mr. Nijam. Would Dr. Zaidi or Mr. Das like to answer this? Although this should also be addressed to the Election Commission at present, but if you can give a perspective, that would be nice.
Is Mr. Dash there? No, I think he has left.
I think he has left because he had to go to the airport.
No, well, I can try to respond to this, that whether a political party, particularly the recognized one and registered one, is meeting ECI parameters or not is a different question than violating something which can then entitle the commission to take action. And in any case, under the existing condition of blanket sort of ban on election commission to deregister political parties, whether recognized or unrecognized, I don't think it's a question of sympathy, etc. I think it is a question of exercise of legal power by the Election Commission of India. And in any case, I think somebody, maybe Aiyshwarya or somebody, was alluding to the fact that, and I had also mentioned that deregistration is an extreme step. And probably, as was mentioned by one of the panelists, that under the current circumstances, what if a major political party is sort of deregistered? What will be the serious consequences of this deregistration, whether it would lead to destabilization. I don't know what kind of. I would leave it to the conjecture of people present here. So I don't think in the near future the commission, in view of legal constraints and in view of the larger consequences, would take any action towards them. And as Mr. Dash was mentioning, that probably in authorities under the given circumstances may take a view that they are registered and therefore we will not disentitle them. So it's not a question of sympathy actually, unless somebody else wants to respond to this.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Zaidi. Can we have the next question, please? Mr. Devendra Tripathi, Section 2G of the Representation of People Act defines the word person and states person does not include a body of persons. So, in that case, in the realm of elections, there can't be any participation of political parties because Section 2G expressly restrains body of persons.
No.
Unless political parties are electors in a constituency, that they lack the power to contest elections in a republican democracy. Kindly address this issue if you think it is appropriate. Thank you, sir. Dr. Zaidi, the onus falls on you again.
Well, as far as I recall, political parties would include the bodies of persons also. So I think the question is not rightly framed. It include person as well as association of persons as well as body of persons. So to that extent, I don't think this would be the right kind of question.
Thank you. Next question, please. Oh, Professor Chhokar, can you give details about the case you referred? Well, I referred to a case called Indian Institute of Social Work or something versus the Indian National Congress. Aiyshwarya, would you like to elaborate? So this is a well-known and well-cited case under which the Supreme Court has said that the Election Commission, though it has the power to register political parties, it does not have the power to deregister them for a number of reasons, which Dr. Zaidi explained in his presentation. And if you want me to give you the exact citation, you will have to contact me separately. I do have it, but I don't remember it. Next question, please. Oh, Mr. Devendra Tripathi is persisting. The 5-judge bench of Supreme Court and Mahendra Singh Gill had said free and fair election is a basic feature of the Constitution. Yes, it did. Next. The ECI under Section 324. Okay, yes. Next. No, we are back to Commodore Batra. Coming back to Mr. I forget the name, who was just the question that, Mr. Devendra Tripathi, Election Commission does have wide powers under Article 324, but those powers are circumscribed by two things. One is the laws made by the Parliament. They put a boundary around what the Election Commission could do. And the other is judgments by the Supreme Court on matters that refer to the Election Commission. Now, if these two things exist, anything that is not contained in these two boundaries, the Election Commission can do whatever it likes in the interest of free and fair elections. But, for example, if the Supreme Court has said that Election Commission does not have the power to deregister, it cannot use Article 324 to overrule the Supreme Court. Alternatively, if there is something written in the Representation of People Act or the Income Tax Act or the Companies Act, Election Commission cannot go beyond or outside those acts to do anything it likes. But if there is something which is not mentioned anywhere, then it has plenary powers. Next question.
So we are done with the questions. We can wrap up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We are on time, but I will take a couple of minutes to have my say. I would like to say, with all respect to Dr. Zaidi, that I think this delisting effectively has no meaning. Mr. Das just clarified that because Section 13A says a political party is a body registered under Section 29A of the Representation of People Act by the Election Commission. Therefore, it is unlikely, to my mind, whether the political parties which have been delisted will be deprived of their income tax exemption. This is my personal
Exactly.
view, sir.
Actually, I had mentioned the same thing, that although Election Commission has written to the Income Tax Department, but we don't know whether they agree with the view of the Election Commission, given the legal framework. And therefore, I had mentioned that probably it would be useful if some kind of survey, some kind of study is undertaken, whether they have really granted this. And as Gunasekar was pointing out, actually, that he gives a good perspective, that if the Election Commission, you see, there are two purposes to delist a political party under these given circumstances. One is to say that they need to contest in the elections. So, but if a political party is registered and it doesn't contest in the election, how can Election Commission compel them to participate in the election? You can take the thirsty horse to a well, but if he doesn't drink, then it is fine. The second is a check on the abuse of money, sort of financial irregularities which these political parties are indulging in. That can come by the application of income tax laws, and whether income tax exemption is being given or not being given is probably an area to be seen. Thank
Well,
you.
sir, I would, since I am an activist and you are a senior bureaucrat, I would assume that no exemption has been stopped.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. The other issue, to my mind, is the whole question of funding. Obviously, the funding issue today is totally overwhelmed by the electoral bonds, and Ms. Mahadev spoke about it quite extensively. But I would, at the risk of becoming a little partisan, I would say that if the Indian National Congress had opposed it, or even now opposes it, then we will be much more confident and comfortable, rather than I know Mr. Rajiv Gowda has written and has said a lot of things, but I mean, why can't the Indian National Congress file a case in the court, join the petition, like another political party of obviously a very different political hue has done it? And the other question that I think Arvind might be better placed to ask, I would say, has Congress accepted any electoral bond? If it has, then there is a serious problem. So you can't accept electoral bonds and then oppose them. Well, I don't want to put you in a spot, because I didn't want to put Dr. Zaidi and Mr. You are our guests and I have to be respectful. But this is the problem.
So not a spot per se, but I think when the bill first came in 2017, the fact is our opposition could have been very limited because it was the finance bill, and you realize with the sort of asymmetric power that we had, I don't think the Rajya Sabha also did pertinently change it. But the reality, sir, today's electoral bonds are a system well established. Political parties beyond the purview of the ones the Supreme Court thought would accept electoral bonds are still getting them. The Congress disproportionately, however, still does receive a certain amount of electoral bonds. But the Congress asks and says, why is there one that only the government has ways and means of finding out who's giving out electoral bonds, and the transparency is the
I
question.
am
So I'll be
I'm
pragmatic.
asking
Political
I'm
parties
asking the same questions, exactly the same questions. But all I'm saying, the Congress can accept, but still say publicly and officially and in the court that they think it is wrong.
So I think we have, in terms of discourse, whether it was Mr. Manu Singhvi, Gaurav Vallabh, most recently, especially when the new amendment came in where you were allowed to sell bonds just before state elections, we spoke about that there's a symmetry in it, in a disproportionate manner, of how there's absolutely no transparency whatsoever. And
No,
even
you
spoke
are.
about the fact that there was a revelation of how if you shine a UV light, you'll see a special identifying number there. The Congress has made its opposition, but let's make a concession, sir. In the current environment we live in, with the sort of money that vitiates the system, I do not believe any political party, and I speak not as a political party's representative, I do not believe any political party today is going to say no to funding because of the manner in which elections are run today. And I
No,
have to
no,
make that question.
I understand what you are saying, but all I'm saying is political parties have to take a stand. Uh, you know, why does a party go to court and others don't? I can say that that party does not get any electoral bonds. But anyway, we can leave it at that. I don't mean to pursue this any further. The other thing I want to say is that
Sorry, Chhokar sir. I just wanted to know, of course, I can find out what is the stand of the Election Commission in the Supreme Court. Have they filed a response?
no, election commission, Dr. Zaidi had written to the government even before these bonds were to be issued, opposing them.
I know that. I
Then,
know.
then after the bonds were issued, the then chief election commissioner made fairly clear statements about it and wrote another letter to the government. But when it came to the Supreme Court, the counsel who appeared on behalf of the Election Commission was a little wishy-washy.
Oh,
And the court asked him, what is your stand? He said, we stand for transparency, but we have nothing to say about the electoral bonds or something like that. So the election commission tried to change its stance, but because its letters were already on file, which we had filed it a part of our petition, it could not. And then the matters never came to a head where the election commission was kind of forced to clarify its position. So I think electoral bonds is something that all of us will have to worry about. But election commission, I understand the limitations of the election commission, but election commission, at least in the last few years, by my own understanding, seems to be doing a lot of things which, for example, on this issue of freebies, it gave a statement in the court saying that they interfering in this issue will be exceeding our powers. And then a few months later, it wrote that long letter about how the parties will have to declare in their manifesto how will they will fund these things and so on and so forth. So, election commission also, I believe, as was said, that political parties are existing under a certain set of special conditions. I guess the election commission is also existing in those conditions, and so are we all. But I think all of us will have to make up our minds whether under these conditions we how much do we give in to these conditions and how much we uh, struggle against these conditions so that we can save democracy and make it stronger. I think, in the interest of time, I will stop here. I thank all the participants and I thank the panelists, particularly so in the face of some strong comments by some of us. I again wish to say that the intention was not to do anything else but to sharpen the discussion. We respect you as guests and we are grateful to you as our guests. Thank you very
I
much.
think I
Thank
think
you.
you have been very mild this in this webinar.
Zaidi Saab, conditions have changed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. It was
Thank
wonderful
you.
being in this webinar. Nice meeting
That,
and getting a very nice perspective from Aiyshwarya
Thank
and
you so
thank
much,
you.
Dr. Zaidi.
Gunasekar.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate your visiting our websites adrindia.org and mynetha.info and listening to our podcasts and webinars. We appreciate all the support you have given to us. Please continue that support and donate at adrindia.org. Thank you.